Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? I am Chris, and it's Friday again. I'm back with another Rings of Power review. This is episode 5, Partings. We're over the halfway point now, everyone. The pain's almost over, okay? Until season 2, and season 3, and season 4, and season 5. If Amazon gets that far with it, we'll find out. Just when you think the series can't possibly get any worse, we have tonight's episode, ladies and gentlemen. So we already have one comment. Everything in Middle Earth is already in the chat. He's raring to go, or she. I don't know. I don't know if you're a he or she. Yeah, we have much to discuss tonight because there is a shower of shit from today's episode, and we're gonna pick it apart. We're gonna talk about it. Shit, really? Everything in Middle Earth says that season 2 hasn't even started filming yet. I thought they were filming in the UK. I thought that shit was happening right now. I did hear rumors that they're building a studio. Basically, the studio that they built in New Zealand and spent a shit ton of money on, they're now having to build that same studio in the UK because they've had to change location because of the whole COVID thing, and New Zealand just went absolutely fucking nuts like a like a totalitarian government, didn't they? There's honestly, it's getting worse, and I'm from England. Okay, anyway, let's do the housekeeping. Let's get it out of the way. Please. Oh, hang on. Let me click that again. I'm going to try this again. Please consider subscribing to the channel for more live streams, movie reviews, TV show reviews. I'm actually doing a lot more TV now than I ever thought I would. Obviously, I've got my reviews here for Rings of Power. I've started doing my weekly reviews on Andor. And then once all those are said and done, it's going to be the Wednesday Addams series, the Tim Burton Netflix series on Wednesday Addams. So I'll probably be talking about that as well. It's going to be a lot of TV, and I just like live streaming and talk about things that I'm passionate about. Lord of the Rings, in case you couldn't tell, being one of them. While you're at it, go and give me a follow on Twitter as well. You can follow me at Hobbit Fan Editor. I'll post all the times that I go live with all of my content, which is actually probably a good thing to do at the moment because I've been streaming quite a lot recently and will continue to do so. I am currently on 98. Get my words out. I can't talk. You know what? I'm gonna take a sip. I'm gonna take a sip. I'm gonna try again. I'm currently on 98 subscribers on YouTube, which is absolutely tremendous. The subscribers have been coming in quite steady, actually, which I'm really surprised about. But I'm very grateful for. So 2 away from the big 100, the triple digits. So hopefully, fingers crossed, spread the word. Hopefully by the end of tonight's stream, hopefully we can get it up to 100 or not far off. I have said when I get to 100, I want to do something special for you guys. So I don't know whether we could do like a Q&A or something, or whatever you guys would like to see. I've just had a notification that Everything in Middle Earth has just followed me on Twitter. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. But yeah, we'll do something fun. When I hit 100, we'll do something fun, whether it's a live stream or whatever it happens to be. In the meantime, and of course, if you're watching this live stream and you're following along with me right now, you're probably going to do this. Let me know your thoughts on the Rings of Power. Are you enjoying this show? Are you hating this show? Thoughts on episode 5, everything in between. And here's the thing. If you come on my live stream saying that, I absolutely love the Rings of Power, I think it's the best TV show ever, and you're not being sarcastic, your opinion is still valid here. I'm open to all opinions, and I've had some, over the past couple of weeks, I've had fantastic discussions with loads of different people, some people who completely disagree with me, and we have a debate and we have a conversation about it. That's why I love doing what I do. All opinions are open on this live stream. Of course, you can find me every Friday at 11 p.m. British Standard Time for my reviews on the Rings of Power as we get through it. But I'll do all the other upcoming streams at the very end. Everything in Middle Earth says it starts in October and they have moved back to New Zealand. Oh, okay. I haven't been following everything there is to know about the Rings of Power, unfortunately. Just giving you a follow. Yeah, I saw that. Thank you so much, dude. I really do appreciate that. Right. Hopefully we get a few more people come in as well, but we've got this. You've already, that first comment you already posted. We will get to that. I have notes. I have many notes, and we're going to go through them. I've condensed my notes into pretty much the order that things happen in the episode, but I might be moving around. I might be jumping around. As I say, I have no real plan for this. I've just got a stream of consciousness of notes. we'll see what comes up. It's one of those shows where pretty much in every single scene, more or less, there is something abhorrent happening that either betrays the law, is completely nonsensical, or is just obnoxious beyond fucking belief. And there's all three of those factors in this episode, which is really, really nice. Okay, we kick off the episode. We've got Nori, and by the way, just the name Nori, and I know it's short for, I can't actually remember what the Harfoot's character's full name is. Female Frodo. It really annoys me that they keep calling her Nori, because that's one of the names of one of the dwarves of Thorin's company, and I can't unhear that. I always just keep thinking of The Hobbit. Nori is teaching Gandalf English, I guess, or basic or common speech, whatever you call it in a fantasy setting. And he's actually got some pretty complex sentences down now. He knows some fairly complex words for a beginner. He knows the word peril, and he's like, he knows snail. That's progress, I guess. And then they're still trying to big up this mystery. It's the whole mystery box thing. It's like, who is the stranger? I think they're actually calling this character now, but I'm sticking with Meteor Man. Or I should just stick with Gandalf, because he is quite clearly Gandalf, and he ain't going to be anyone else. I could almost bet money on that. And they're still trying to... There's this shroud of mystery on who Sauron is. It's like, oh, is it the stranger? Is he actually Sauron? Is it Ada? Is he Sauron? That's who I think we're meant to believe is Sauron, but quite clearly he isn't, and we already knew that. Or is it Halbrand, who is totally not Sauron the whole time? It's just laughable that they're still trying to play up this mystery. It's quite clearly Gandalf, and I don't get the mystery. I don't know. For all like the nostalgia baiting and everything they're throwing into this, we will get to the Balrog later, by the way. I don't know why they don't just come out right and just say it's Gandalf, or even if they can't use the name Gandalf, Aloran. Just, I don't get it. Maybe they have more plans for this character, but shit, I don't know. And he's kind of testing his magical powers, and he doesn't really have a handle on them, and he can't really control them. You know what? Shit, not much happens. I'm just going to jump ahead. I'm just going to condense all the storylines. Why not? Following that, we have female Sam, who has a music video moment. And on the one hand, I guess it's kind of nice that they're acknowledging that music is music and songs, especially with hobbits, are very, very important, especially in Tolkien's works and, the novels and everything. There's so many poems and there's so many verses and songs and everything that he throws into the book. So I guess it's nice that they've chose to add a song in, but it's the way that it's edited. It's like this really cheesy traveling, like buddy road movie kind of thing. It's like a music video. And it's this traveling montage, and it's doing the whole Indiana Jones thing on the map with like the, with like the little dots showing where they're traveling. And, I'm watching this. They're traveling really slow. That's the whole essence of why they've been left behind, basically. They're traveling really slow, and they're covering masses of land, especially for hobbits who do, they can walk long distances, but they walk slow. So I'm seeing them move all the way across the map on Middle-earth, and I'm thinking, how much time is passing with these travels? But again, this series has no sense of geographical distance. The time scale and time framing is just completely off, because other storylines don't skip ahead a couple of months. They pick right up where they left off last time. For the most part, although I was actually really confused with the whole Numenor storyline in today's episode, because that didn't really feel... That felt like it was going to follow on from last week, but then it took a back pedal, and then this week's episode ended in exactly the same place that last week's episode. We'll get to that, because that was really confusing. But my point is, time is passing. It takes time to traverse Middle-earth. Frodo at the end of Return of the King says it's been 13 months to the day. It takes a long fucking time to get across the map. So they're traveling, and we've got this song going on. And actually, the biggest positive thing I could say from this whole episode is New Zealand looks incredible. And it is still number one on my bucket list of places to go. I want to make that nerdy pilgrimage there. And I'm going to spend so much money if I ever get there. I'm going to spend a freakish amount of money when I'm out there. Every bit of merch from every Lord of the Rings gift shop I see is being purchased. I can't help it. I have no control over this, but I speak as I find, and maybe some of them have been CGI enhanced and everything, but the landscapes looks absolutely gorgeous, and you look at it and go, yep, that's New Zealand. The problem I have with the song in question that is being sung is that this is a verse from The Lord of the Rings, and it's probably one of Tolkien's most famous pieces of writing. It's often quoted. It's often quoted out of context of The Lord of the Rings. All that is gold does not glitter. Not oh God, I've forgotten it now. Jesus. Not all those who wander are lost. It's that verse, right? All that is gold does not glitter. And they use it in this song, and there's a line, and they put it in there. It's not all who wander or wander are lost, or something like that. They do a variation of it in this episode, and I just thought, wow, you really had to go there, didn't you? You really had to throw that in there. And it's just, it ruins everything now, because I'm thinking this in the context of the book. And that whole verse was a poem, I believe, if I remember rightly, Bilbo wrote when he first met Aragorn and Aragorn revealed his true identity. Bilbo wrote a poem which he recites at the Council of Elrond, I think. An extract of which is actually used in the Return of the King film. It's when they're about to reforge the Sword of Anduil. And it's said by Arwen, from the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadow shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king. God, I can't get my words out today for some reason. Yeah, and they do like a variation on that song, and the song plays in the credits as well. And I suppose as a song, it's quite nice. It feels very Irish, folky kind of song, which actually makes sense because, you know, all of the Harfoots have terrible stage Irish accents. And I guess the song feels hobbity in nature, but just the fact that they threw that line in there. I'm going to bring up the verse, actually, because I'm annoyed that I actually can't remember it. Let me find... Yeah, I'm forgetting one of the lines from there. Yeah, so the whole poem is, all that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost, the old that is strong does not wither, deep roots are not reached by the frost, and then it's from the ashes of fire shall be woken, blah, 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 everything I just said. So yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of... Well, in my notes, I put a quote, not all who wander or wander are lost, and I put 3 angry swearing face emojis, so I guess when I watched it, it really pissed me off that they threw that in there. Let's go to some of your comments, everything in Middle Earth, because I'm prattling on here. It says, I'm assuming you're talking about Nori here. Her accent keeps switching from Irish to Bristol. I'm going to be looking out for the Bristol accent now. I honestly don't get why they went ahead with a story that they don't have all the rights to. It's just a money spinner, isn't it? It's just, oh, Lord of the Rings is really popular. That's an IP. No one's doing anything with that at the moment. A lot of it, I think, was the fantasy TV show vacuum that was empty after Game of Thrones finished. Game of Thrones was massively successful, even despite a very incredibly terrible final couple of seasons. And then fantasy TV shows are everywhere at the moment, and we have Game of Thrones to thank for that. And I think that Amazon just wanted a piece of it. Netflix tried it, with resurrecting Dark Crystal, which I actually thought was a really fucking great series. Age of Resistance, it's a real shame they cancelled that after 1 season. You've got Netflix with The Witcher as well. Then you've got Amazon with The Wheel of Time, and now with this and The House of the Dragon coming back. So it's just loads of fantasy stuff at the moment, isn't it? It's all just trying to get a piece of the action, really. Everything in Middle Earth says, also, I thought Harfoots were meant to be secretive and keeping their heads down, but they burst out in song, cover blown. Well, it's not just that as well. They burst into song. So, yeah, cover blown. But also the lyrics of the song are talking about wandering and adventuring and traversing and everything like that. And they don't, do they? They're a small knit community. They only travel when they have to migrate, and even then they do it all together. It's not like they keep going like, oh, Nori, why are you so adventurous and wanting to go on all these things? Like, keep your nose out of trouble and no trouble will come to you kind of attitude. And then they're singing a song about wandering, which is just, unless it was improvised, some hobbits are pretty good at improvising a song, so maybe she just came up with it on the spot. I don't know. Everything in Middle Earth says Halbrand somehow became a member of the guild within the space of 5 minutes. Well, here's the thing. Yeah, I don't know how much time is passing, because the Numenor stuff looks like it takes place directly after where we last left it. Let's say the hobbits are traveling for a couple of months. Does that couple of months get added on to Numenor? Is that the month and a bit gap where Halbrand became a member of the guild? I don't know, dude. It's the power of Sauron, I guess. Just natural talent, a lot of studying, passed all of his exams. I don't know. Everything in Middle Earth says same. I really want to go road trip. Let's do it. Well, I mean, you can't really do a road trip to New Zealand, can you? You can do a road trip once you get to New Zealand. It's the getting there to New Zealand that's the expensive thing. Then we cut to one random scene that doesn't have any payoff this episode, so it's really random that they threw it in there. Slim Shady, the one that we all thought was Sauron, the androgynous priest character. I don't know who it is. I think I heard a rumor or something that they're servants of Morgoth or something like that. They keep the old ways, probably like a Sauron cult or a Morgoth cult or something like that. The old magic or the old dark magic or something like that. They approach the site where Gandalf crash landed, and they're looking at all the runes and everything and trying to check it out. And that's it. That's all we get of that scene. That's it. Done. I'm sure they'll have more to do later on down the line. And I think I heard something about Galadriel possibly fighting one, because she fights everyone, doesn't she? And we will get to that scene. That I actually think that might be the worst scene out of all 5 episodes, is that Galadriel scene. And you know what I'm talking about. If you've seen the episode, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Middle Earth says, plot for Numenor this episode is we are going to Middle Earth. We aren't going to Middle Earth. We are going to Middle Earth. Yeah, that was the thing. I will get on to Numenor in just a second, just a few other little bits to talk about, and then I'm going to come back to that comment, because that's exactly what I thought as well. We then have Adar, Benjen Stark for Game of Thrones, talking to an orc. And the orc's like, oh, my arm's burning. Probably because he's got like an infection or something in there, I guess, if he's been cut. And Adar's actually a really interesting... Oh, no, he's not an interesting... I like the actor. And I think the actor's very, very good. I like the design, I guess, of this character. And when he was cast originally, I think everyone, I know I certainly was like, oh, he's playing Sauron. When you saw the cast photographs, and we were trying to speculate who was going to be in the show. It's Second Age. We know they're going to do Numenor. That we know they're going to do this. And you see his profile, and you're like, he's playing Sauron. And I thought, you know what? That's actually really good casting. I think he could play a really good Sauron. And they're still trying to bait you into thinking he could be Sauron. But that gets swept under the rug pretty quickly in this episode, because when the old farmer dude tells him, believes that he's Sauron, he flips the fuck out, and he like choke slams this guy, pretty much German suplexes this guy to the ground. So he hates being called Sauron. So he doesn't want to be lumped in the same category as Sauron. I think I heard something like that. He is breeding orcs, though. He is creating orcs, and he sees himself as a leader of these people. I don't know whether it's going to be something like this, because he's all like messed up, isn't he, in the face? Like he's scarred, he's like brutalized and everything. So they talk about that orcs are created, or at least they were back when orcs were first created, and then probably, from generations of selective breeding and everything like that, you've essentially created a new sub-race of orc that can just kind of breed and take care of themselves at that point. But in the beginning, and Saruman says this in the Fellowship of the Ring movie, it's like, do you know how the orcs first came into being? They were elves once, taken by the dark powers, tortured and mutilated. I can't do Christopher Lee. No one can do Christopher Lee, only Christopher Lee. But that's what I'm thinking, because he's all kind of scarred and messed up. I'm wondering if this was an elf who was kidnapped, tortured for like years and years, so much of his life, to try and turn him into an orc, and then maybe got liberated or escaped or something, and now has sympathy for the orcs. Maybe these orcs are his people. Maybe these were other elves that weren't so lucky. I don't know. and he wants to kind of create a community for them. That's what I was hypothesizing. If you're going to have this character who's this fallen elf who is neither on the side of good nor bad, but then by the end of it, he does look pretty bad. You know, he's forcing someone to, you know, there's human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. And then by the end of it, he's mobilizing an army to kill the humans in the Southlands. So I guess we're meant to infer that he is a pretty bad dude at this point. But we don't know anything about him still. The episode that was called Adar, we got nothing. And we got nothing the episode after, and we still don't know anything about this guy. I don't know if it's just sort of the mystery box storytelling where we've got to have all of this intrigue and not pay anything off just to keep viewership and just to keep people guessing. But it is really frustrating that we haven't really had any scenes with this guy. We had a few last episode, I suppose, but nothing. There's no meat. Oh god, that's a line in this episode, isn't it, as well, with Durin, where he's talking to Elrond. He's like, what does he say? He's just like, let's get to the meat, just give it to me raw, give it to us raw and wriggling. I don't know. There's some truly corkers of lines in this episode. Just going back to... sorry, I've missed some of the comments here. Everything in Middle-earth says Slim Shady just looks up and that's it. 5 hours in, I still feel like nothing has progressed. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is with a show as well, you want to hook someone in straight away. And this is kind of the problem I had with Andor as well. Andor, there was a lot I did actually think was pretty positive about the first 3 episodes of Andor, and I'm keeping an open mind for where it goes. But I said in my review that it's boring as shit, and it didn't entertain me, and it didn't really keep me hooked. But I guess that, you know, there are elements of it that I do enjoy, and that I am kind of excited to see where it goes, I suppose. You've got to come out of the gate, and Game of Thrones is season 1 of Game of Thrones when it was actually good. You look at how much ground was covered in even just episode 1 of that, let alone by episode 5. And, you know, granted, well, I mean, there's 2 less episodes in this series compared to Game of Thrones. And all the episodes so far in this series have clocked in over an hour. I swear they have, at least the last few. And it's just doing nothing with its runtime. What's the plot at the moment? Nothing's... It feels like it's just stagnated. It's really dragging its heels, and we're basically beginning... I want to say we'll be beginning the 3rd act next week. We're at episode 6 of 8. 6 of 8, and nothing's happened. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And the stuff that does happen, the reason it feels like it's not going anywhere is because they waste this whole episode of Numenor backtracking to then get us to exactly the same destination we were at the end of the last episode. Last episode, as you mentioned, it was like, hey, we're all going to war, we're all going to Middle-earth, this is happening. And then in this episode, they're all still chilling in Numenor and nothing's happening, and they're all debating whether they should go or not. And then by the end of the episode, it's like, oh yeah, we are actually going. And they get in the ships and they start setting sail. So I'm fully expecting the next episode for them to still be in Numenor and go like, we turn the ships around because we still need to have council and decide whether we are actually going to Middle-earth at this point. Oh, Galadriel. Oh, breaker of chains, king of the Andals and the first men. Although the Isildur letting the terrorists go is probably up there with the worst scene. Yeah. I think it's just because they're really trying to vilify Isildur as a character. Because Fellowship of the Ring kind of did that as well, in all fairness. If you compare Isildur from the movies to Isildur from the books, the book guy is just kind of, you know, bad things happen to this dude. He's not necessarily a bad guy, and he is still very heroic. And even to his dying breath, he didn't flee the battle. He was there, and then when everyone was getting killed, I think it was his son who said, like, look, you just got to get out of here. Like, just go, save yourself. And that's when he left. Whereas the movie did vilify him a little bit. And I guess they're trying to do the same with this guy. Because, yeah, Isildur is one of the worst things in this whole fucking show. The actor's not great. The way he's portrayed is just kind of like this... It's just a fucking pushover, isn't he? He's just no good at anything. Yeah, he's just a bit of I don't even know, a wet blanket, I suppose, is a good descriptive for Isildur in this series, but the same goes for a lot of the characters, really. Says I really like the Benjen actor, but yeah, the character of Radar is bland. Maybe we will get some backstory on the character, but I mean, I just really don't give a shit at the moment. Even if we do get some backstory on the character, I suppose it'll be nice, better than no backstory. Give me the meat, give it to me raw. I think that's the quote of the whole episode, really, isn't it? I'm probably going to try and slip that into everyday conversation. We've got Carl. Carl is in the house. Thank you so much for tuning in, my friend. Hopefully doing well and having a good night tonight. I know, sure as hell I am talking about Rings of Power. I'm not even being facetious about that, by the way. You know, watching the Rings of Power, oh God, I feel like this is Stockholm Syndrome a little bit. I don't even know if that's the right term for it, but I hate it. But I've reached acceptance with it that this is just a steaming pile of shit. And I'm actually kind of intrigued. And I almost see it as like a comedy show now at this point, just to see what they're going to do next. Although they're kind of just, you know, pounding my favorite, you know, legendarium, favorite novels, favorite films, favorite everything into the ground. It's kind of funny to watch them try and do something really revered and, you know, really special, and it just fail in every single conceivable way. And seeing people react against this show. I didn't want this show to be bad. When they said, you know, Amazon are making a Middle-earth TV show, I was like, fantastic. It's a great medium for it. You can cover so much. And, you know, even the marketing, when they were releasing the map and saying we were going to go to Thorodwraith and we were going to go to Lindon and we were going to go to Numenor and the Southlands and all these places, I was like, fuck yeah, this is great. Loving it. And then the trailers started to come out, and then the featurettes, and that's when I knew. But I love coming on here and talking about Middle-earth and stuff and talking about Rings of Power, so it's all good. Everything in Middle-earth says, I'm going to bed now. Love the live stream. Keep up the good work, pal. Thank you so much for the viewership. And yeah, if you do manage to catch the rest of the stream, please do comment, because I will reply to you whenever I can. And yeah, because there's much more to cover in the episode. Don't you worry about that. But yeah, have a good night, and hopefully catch you next week for the next one. It's like group therapy, isn't it? I always keep saying that. Then we cut to what's her name? Breadwinner, the hot mom. That's what I've called her, hot mom. You know, because she's leading the people of the Southlands now. Although she's a healer of the village and doesn't really have any leadership skills, she just kind of told them all that they should travel to the watchtower, and then all of a sudden she's now asserted herself as the leader of the group. She says that, oh, we need to stay here and rebuild this completely pointless watchtower, and we need to set up camp here. And this is the most easily swayed crowd I've ever seen. I think it's like that sketch from The Simpsons, right? With the crowd where, you know, oh, actually, this sounds like a good idea. Oh, no, actually, no, fuck that. This is a good idea. Oh, no, this one. And they do that in The Hobbit as well. When they get to Lake Town and Thorin's, you know, if we succeed, all will share in the wealth of the mountain. You will have enough gold to rebuild Esgaroth 10 times over. And the whole crowd goes nuts. And it's like, yeah, we're going to be rich. And then Bard shows up and he's like, have you forgotten what happened to Dale and the people that died in the firestorm? And he's going to bring a dragon on us and everything. And all the crowd's like, oh, yeah, no, actually, that is a good point. And then Thorin's like, nah, fuck that. We're going to get loads of gold. And then the crowd suddenly like, yeah, Thorin. It's Thorin Bard. And it was kind of like this too. She was like, yeah, you know, she gives this empowered speech about rebuilding their way of life. And then the old geezer from the end of the last episode, who was like, tell me, lad, have you heard of Sauron? He chimes up and he's like, this is a really shit idea. We shouldn't do this. Our ancestors lived, which is another great line. He's like, do you know what our ancestors did? They lived. I'm like, well, yeah, you're here. So of course they did. It's just a ridiculous line. But he says we should take our chances. And I think does he say outright that we should go and parlay with the orcs? Or does he just say that we should take our chances? And then he kind of takes them to the orcs. I actually can't remember that point. I can't remember if he directly takes them to the orcs or if they just... The point is they end up with the orcs and the whole bunch of the crew leave, which is really funny. They just all go with this guy. But there's a whole group of people there. I'm like, does no one else have an idea of what we should do? We're just going to listen to this hot mom healer of the group, or this old geezer that smells of ale and BO? Like, I don't know. Surely some other people could chime in. Like, it's a whole group of people. Like, wouldn't there be other people throwing suggestions out there of what they could do? So the group split apart, and the majority of them go with old geezer, and then, you know, the plot-centric characters stay by the watchtower because, I don't know, it's not even like it's fortified. It's not like it's Helm's Deep or Minas Tirith or something. There's nothing you can fortify. The watchtower isn't even complete where you could use it as a vantage point. It's pretty much like in absolute ruin. I think, if I remember rightly, like they're not really going to use it for something. But the thing that it is used for is some really convenient, contrived script writing. In that, not Halbrand. What's the name of it? Theo. Theo presents the sword, the Morgul sword or whatever it is, the magical, mystical sword that he has. And he delivers it to the elf guy whose name I keep forgetting. Arondir, there we go. And he says, like, what do you make of this? And he's like, I have seen this before. And he just happens on that watchtower. They don't even have to travel to this place. On that tower, behind some vines and some shrubbery or whatever, he kind of like pulls it apart. And there's this mural that's etched into the side of the tower that just gives him all the information he needs. And it's like, oh, it's a key to something. And this mural depicts... What was it? This was a key to... fucking Sauron or some shit. I can't remember what he said. It's a key to something. I don't give a shit. And I was like, wow, that's really fucking convenient that out of all the towers in all the world, you happen to come to this one, and the information that you need, just the moment that you're presented with this sword, is all very conveniently etched on this tower for you and for the audience's benefit. I thought that was really fucking lazy writing and just downright terrible. And I may as well jump ahead to the very last. I think it's the last shot of the episode, isn't it, or one of them? Once the old geezer gets to the orcs, he initially thinks that Adar is Sauron, and he calls him Sauron, and Adar doesn't like that, and he picks him up by the throat and chokeslams it. And he's basically like, if you want to be one of us, if you want to serve under us, then oaths are bound in blood. And he picks up like this young lad from the group, and he says, right, kill him. And it's implied that the old geezer did in fact kill him, human sacrifice, and then the final shot is the whole army of orcs marching towards the tower that are actually surprisingly already close to the tower. I thought they were a fair distance away, but apparently not. Like these, well, I guess, you know, Arondir was in running distance, wasn't it? They ran through the forest. But this is a whole army that's coming after him. So, but I've heard rumors as well for the next episode that just when everything seems bleak, at the last minute, you're going to have all of the Númenóreans ride in with Galadriel. It's going to be that cavalry charge, isn't it? I guarantee it's going to be something to do with that, marching through the Southlands, perhaps, coming to the rescue of the people at the tower. That scene from the trailer, I did a trailer reaction, and it's like you've got two people on a horse, and they're linking a chain in between them, and they just kind of knock this whole platoon of orcs down like it's bowling pins, and it looks absolutely terrible. That's going to be next episode. So these orcs are pretty much already on the doorstep of this watchtower. And then I've heard that in the next episode, the armies of Númenor get to the Southlands and aid them right at the last minute and save the day. If that's the case, and if that happens, then geographical distance and time means absolutely nothing, because these are on the other side of the fucking Sundering Sea. These have started on the Isle of Númenor. They've got to sail basically the course of the Atlantic, isn't it? Is it half of the Atlantic Ocean, or basically the equivalent of the Atlantic Ocean? They've got to sail on an old-style boat to Middle-earth, which is going to put you on the very western edge, and then you've got to ride all the way from there to the Southlands, and they're going to do that in the span of one episode. Makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. And if that happens, the show's fucked. I mean, the show's already fucked, but it's doubly fucked if that happens. And I already know it's going to happen. I already know it's going to happen. And you're going to have some like really contrived girl power moment between, I've forgotten her name again, Hot Mom of the Southlands. I can't remember what her name is. You're going to have a moment of Galadriel and her, aren't you? Like 100%. So we go back to Numenor. It's a shame actually that everything in Middle Earth's already signed off, because he had a lot of thoughts on Numenor, and I absolutely agree with him. Yeah, we kind of backtrack. This is the comment that they posted. The plot for Numenor this episode is we are going to Middle Earth. We aren't going to Middle Earth, and then by the end of it, we're going to Middle Earth again. And I was really confused by the beginning of this episode, because none of it seemed like it followed directly on from the previous one we got last week, purely for that fact that it backpedaled. And I was really confused about that. I was trying to think, was there a piece of information in the last episode that I missed where they were going to stay in Numenor, or did they mention something at the beginning of this one? And as far as I know, I didn't miss anything. It was just really weirdly edited or weirdly paced. So Numenor is annoyed that the Queen Regent is going to decide to sail with Galadriel, and they're holding council. Miriel goes to her father, Tar Palantir, and says, I'm going to sail to Middle Earth. And then her father says, don't sail to Middle Earth. It's an omen of dread, blah, and bad things are going to happen, fall of Numenor, etc. And it's a real shame, because the whole Numenor stuff in the books is absolutely fascinating, and they've got all the ingredients they need to really flesh out this world and the relations between the elves and the men of Numenor, and the Valar as well. They're not catching us up, the viewers, on key information here. We still don't know really why the people of Numenor hate the elves. We haven't been told, and we've had ample opportunities to be told by that. It's the fact that they envy them of their long life. They want immortality as well, and they're not blessed with it. They're blessed with long life, but they're not blessed with immortality, which is the whole crux of why they eventually want to wage war on the gods. The fact that they're banned, the great ban, from sailing into the utmost west. They're not allowed into the Undying Lands, but the elves are. So that's another reason. They're pissed that, they're a nomadic people. They like to venture. They like to charter every single corner of the map. And there's a big portion of the map that they're not allowed to do that on. And we haven't been given any of this information. If you haven't read the Silmarillion or the Akallabeth or the Unfinished Tales, you wouldn't know any of this information. And the show isn't telling it. And it's got ample opportunity. And it would flesh out it's great world building. It would give a sense of characters' relationships and the way they talk to people and their current state, their thought process on things. We aren't getting any of that, and it's just a massive missed opportunity. We get some scenes of Ar-Pharazôn, and I have yet to see. They keep, they're portraying him like he's a bad guy, and in the books, he's a very bad guy. He's an absolute despicable asshole, which is one of the key components as to the fall of Numenor itself. But so far, dude's like spitting really logical stuff. He's all for Halbrand going to the Southlands, and he wants him to go there because he says, once Halbrand's reinserted there in the Southlands, it will lead to some great trading opportunities for us, and our relations with the men in the Southlands and the men of Middle-earth in general. We'll be able to set up trade routes and everything like that. I'm like, yeah, all of these are good things. All of these are things that a good, solid leader would do and would think about. But it's playing like really villainous music behind him, and it is vilifying him for sure. And if we're at least halfway familiar with the character of Ar-Pharazôn, or we've read the book, we know that he is he's a huge villain. But the show isn't really doing a good job at the moment, at least I don't think it is, of really showcasing his villainy. They're framing him as a working in the shadows kind of a bit like Littlefinger, I guess, like Peter Baelish from Game of Thrones. He's playing this long game where he's trying to curry favor with the people, but pushing his own agenda and going against the leadership and trying to forge a name for himself. But nothing particularly in the guy's actions so far, at least, have been anywhere near villainous. So it's just very strange that what they're trying to do. We get another shot of Halbrand forging, which we already spoke about earlier. I don't know how he got his guild license or whatever it is to be a blacksmith, but I don't even write Halbrand now. In my notes, I just write the name Sauron because I'm so convinced that he's Sauron, and they're not even doing a good job of hiding it now. Unless they're going to subvert expectations, and because everyone's predicted that he's going to be Sauron, they're going to change the writing later on down the line, and I don't know, make Nori the half-foot Sauron or something, just something completely out of left field, because that's something that Game of Thrones Season 8 would have done. We get some name drops here and there to Lord of the Rings iconography and namesakes. The word fellowship is mentioned by Halbrand, and you're there watching it going, you may not have noticed it, but your brain did, kind of thing. It's just, name drops like that. Similar sounding phrases to stuff from the Lord of the Rings. There's another one later on, I think, said by Gil-galad, when he says, oh no, it might be Celeborn, actually. Not Celeborn. He's not in the show. Celebrimbor. He was like, I was there, Elrond. And you just think, I was there, Gandalf. I was there 3,000 years ago. Which is a great meme. Let's see. Is this the scene where you have Halbrand talking to Galadriel, and he says, like, why do you keep fighting? And she kind of breaks down and says, because it's all I can do. All I think about is vengeance and the death of my brother and everything like that. And Halbrand's like, yeah, I've got some stuff to avenge as well. I'm pretty hell-bent on vengeance. And Galadriel's like, you haven't revenged things as well as I have. I'm more vengeful than you, and feel sorry for me more than I feel sorry for you, because I'm Galadriel and I'm the center of attention. We have, oh my god, Christiana. I'm gonna have to go by your last name, I'm afraid. Good evening. When's it coming out? When's what coming out? Are you talking about episode 5 of The Rings of Power? Because it's already out. We're talking about it now. I'm a little bit confused, unless you're referring to something earlier on in the stream. So just clarify to me what it is that should be coming out, because I'm really confused by that. We cut to Lenny Henry half-foot. And then I was really confused about this as well. Like, by the end of the episode, did Nori catch up with the rest of the hobbits? It might have been edited really awkwardly, and I got a bit confused, because you have, Lenny Henry and the half-foots, and they're saying, oh, should we have left them behind? We're going to make someone a widow or an orphan or something. I'm like, yeah, you're fucking horrible people. You are not a good, friendly community race of people. You are outright leaving people behind to die. That's not a good. And then you do like this weird kind of semi-religious remembrance service for the people that you specifically left behind. It's a really weird thing that's happening. I think they go off looking for mushrooms, don't they? Like shortcut to mushrooms or something, and then the wolves attack. But then in the wolf attack, it's Nori and her family. So I was like, well, hang on, did the stranger and Nori catch up with Lenny Henry and everyone else? I was really confused about that. So yeah, Lenny Henry's just the whole thing with the half-foots, half-feet. It is just weird to me, and I don't like it. Yeah, there's the wolf attack. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Gandalf fends them off by using his magic powers, and then they're kind of going, oh, is this guy a force for good or a force for evil? But I guess that ties up that nugget of information, doesn't it? Do you remember the wolves in episode 1, how they were a big deal and they were building up to a big storyline with the wolves? Yeah, that's it. Done. The wolves were in this episode, 30 seconds? They showed up for like a sneak attack, and then Gandalf just uses a spell on them and they're gone. That's it. That's your great wolf storyline over with, I guess. I'm going to take a drink, so talk amongst yourselves, because we are about to get onto the worst scene of not just this episode, but in my opinion, all of Rings of Power so far. And it's an absolute doozy, so stick around. Okay, we are in Numenor, and this is about Galadriel. Of course it is. Of course it's about Galadriel, because she is easily the worst character in this entire show. Thoroughly unlikable, every single scene. Written terribly, acted terribly, everything about her. We have Elendel, teaching the men of... Well, he's instructing the men of Numenor to fight, which is kind of strange in itself, because it is a warrior nation. But I get it, not everyone pops out the womb in Numenor immediately knowing how to fight. So he's training some guys up. They've got the best guys in the business. The Numenorian army itself is one of the best armies in all of Middle Earth, in all of Arda. And he's training them up, and, you know, he's doing a fine job of it. And then Galadriel steps in, and she's like, your men are not used to the foes that I have fought. I'm like, oh yeah, it's always about you, isn't it, Galadriel? You've always got a fucking answer for everything. And he's like, right, take the wheel, show them how it's done. And then we have Galadriel teaching the men of Númenor how to fight. I'm like, okay. And I think another channel mentioned this as well. It's not just Galadriel, because maybe an argument could be made for Galadriel, but the way she stands, the actress, she's always up. It's, you know, shoulders back, chest out, arms just kind of hanging at the sides, like she's standing really awkwardly. But it's not just Galadriel. It's every single woman in this show stands like this. It's just very weird to me. So Galadriel, because, you know, it doesn't even, it's not really a training exercise in any way. It's just an act of hubris. She just wants to showcase how fucking amazing she is at everything, and to belittle everyone else around her. So she's like, anyone who you know, cuts me or lays a blow on me will be immediately promoted to lieutenant. So you've got all the guys kind of trying to slash her. There's about 5 or 6 guys, by the way, that are all trying to attack her. Nikki, hey, good to see you here. I was hoping you were going to join us tonight. It says, what the fuck? Yeah, we're on the worst scene. I'm so glad. Aren't you so glad that you jumped on this live stream right now at the worst moment of the entire episode of Rings of Power? Congratulations. I'm here to help. And you've got like 5 or 6 guys that all try and attack her at once. And the choreography is like really bad as well. Like it's really obvious that they're trying to miss her. But then also on the flip side, some of them are going for, you know, it's a friendly sparring thing, but she's like, you know, try and attack me and try and land a blow on me. And you've got people going in for like an overhead, like decapitation or something, or like to clover in twain. I'm like, you know, keep it friendly, guys. Yeah, and it's the choreography is so bad as well. And I was actually watching Nerdrotic's review earlier. I watched bits of it, and he mentioned how during this fight, clearly to try and obscure some of the really bad choreography with, is it Morford Clark or whatever her name is? I don't know if that's the name, who plays Galadriel. They're filming behind pillars, so she's kind of obscured. There's people in the way who run in front of her in really quick edits, probably to mask the fact that the choreography is really bad or that she can't do it. And then they do some like Matrix-y shit in more ways than one, actually. The first way is you have like this really bad slow-mo flip and dodges that Galadriel's doing. And it's just all out of hubris. It's not a training exercise. And ultimately, the training exercise that she does give everyone is just to lunge, stab, twist, retract. She tells the men of Númenor, in order to kill orcs, you have to stab them. That's her wonderful wisdom that she's in. I've fought this foe before. You have not seen what I have seen. You've got to stab them. Great. Thanks, Galadriel. Thanks, Captain fucking Obvious. But the other Matrix thing that it rips off is when she's sparring these dudes, it cuts to someone else in the town. It's like the Neo's fighting Morpheus moment and in the Nebuchadnezzar, and then they all rush in and they're all like watching the fight happen. Someone's like, Galadriel's fighting the men, and they all rush and they're all cheering them on. It's just, yeah, it's absolutely trash. Absolute trash fire. You've got Galadriel dual wielding swords fighting these 6 dudes, and men of Númenor. Men of fucking Númenor. These guys should be built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They should be built like Fabio back in his prime. These are like men's men. These are like some of the best fighters in all of Arda. They live by the sword. They live by the ship. The sea is always right. And yeah, it's just absolutely, it's so transparent what they're trying to do. And it has been for all of these episodes, but it really came to a head with me with this episode where you've got Elendel who just gets like completely emasculated, who's just training these guys, and he's just like, yep, no, Galadriel, yes, ma'am, you know what's best, you go do it. And the thing is, I think the actor playing Elendil is actually really good, and I wish he'd get more screen time and more material. Same with Uncle Benjen, who plays Adar. Plays a really, I think Adar could be a really interesting character, or I think that he could have played a much more interesting Sauron, for example. But yeah, it's an absolute trash fire. And that scene is the worst thing I've seen in this show so far. But I know that we're not at the neck of woods yet, are we? We've got 3 episodes left to go in season 1, and I think it's just going to get worse. When you've got Galadriel fighting on that volcano on a Rodruin, and she's having like a back-to-back fight with Miriel on the side of a volcano, and she's leading cavalry charges against orcs. It's gonna get, this shit's just gonna compound on itself. So stick around for the next 3 weeks, because it's gonna get hairy. Sam Oak says, what do you think to it being 5 seasons? Apparently it has to all be made as part of the deal, no cancel allowed. That's actually really interesting, because I did hear about that as well, and I don't really know. I wasn't aware of the politics isn't the right word, but the fine print, the paperwork of stuff like this. As far as I know, I thought it's like a film trilogy, right? It's like, we're going to make a trilogy of films. And it's like, okay, and let's say they make the first one and it doesn't do very well. If the second and third one isn't greenlit, 100% greenlit, then they can back out of it. And I thought that was the same deal with this. I thought, right, season 2 is already happening. That's greenlit. That's in production. That's happening right now. They can't get out of season 2. But season 3, 4, and 5 is way, way ahead. And shows can be cancelled at any time. That was my understanding. So I thought they're not going to be able to get out of season 2, but there is still a chance that they could pull the plug on 3, 4, and 5. But that's new information to me. If they've said that, it's part of the deal, I think they'd lose money though, wouldn't they? But yeah, if that's part of the deal and they've committed to 5, good luck. I'm just gonna watch the captain go down with the ship with this whole thing, because it's hilarious. The absolute misfire on every single front on this series has been absolutely laughable, and a cautionary tale, I think, as well. That there is no way that they could resurrect this series. There is no way that they could recover this series. Clearly, they're going to look at the negative reception, even though they're deleting negative reviews and have deleted thousands of 1-star reviews on their website, silencing negative reviews on this thing. Well, they haven't silenced me yet, touch wood. So I'm going to keep fighting the good fight with it. But yeah, it's. I think Nikki, I think you posted it last night, right, where you said it's like a dystopian future. It's that voices are being silenced, and it's only positive. The Rings of Power is the fantastic, most watched show of all time kind of thing. But there is no way that they could recover this. They're going to look at the negative criticism from this show and probably try and course correct. I think behind the scenes at the moment, probably at Amazon, a lot of heads are rolling. There's a lot of finger pointing, and I think things are going to get shuffled around. I think you're going to have new showrunners. I think you're going to have new writers. I don't know if they could recast characters, if they could get a new actress in to play Galadriel. Essentially, the only way that I think they could get around this is if they just completely wipe season 1 off the face of the earth and just retcon it completely and just say, hold their hands up and say, we fucked up, which they won't do. They won't do. And if they just reboot the entire series, or they come at it from a different angle and they just abandon the whole Rings of Power thing and they tell a different story in Middle-earth with brand new characters and a completely different setting. And, then you could get brand new characters in, and they need new writers, writers that aren't just all about putting political messages in there and agenda, gender politics and just political commentary and everything like that, and just depict Tolkien as Tolkien fucking wrote it, with writers that have a real passion for it and actually want to see it adapted and adapt it well. That is the only way they could resurrect this. And the thing is, they wouldn't be resurrecting the Rings of Power. They'd be resurrecting the notion that we can produce Middle-earth TV shows. So they could move to a different time span. They could move to a different event, a different, character, a different period of the history, as long as they've got the rights to it. And I think they've just got to abandon this whole thing. That is the only way that they could claw any kind of return back from this thing. If it stands and we've got to continue with these characters and fucking Halbrand and this version of Galadriel, and even if they do get a new writing team and they actually have some, passion behind it and want to overhaul the entire thing, well, you've still got season 1 hanging over you. And it's like, well, do we acknowledge that? Those are the established characters. We've kind of got to continue what we were given. So it's fucked. It's completely fucked. And let it be, because it deserves to be. Nikki says Peter Jackson's Fellowship prologue lasted 6 minutes and set up everything more than adequately. Yeah, and here's the thing, like that prologue, if you really do a deep dive into the book, it's not completely accurate. It does truncate the timeline. It does simplify events, but it gets the job. He had a vision and he knew everything he needed in that prologue. And there's even behind the scenes of that with the script writing thing saying that, I think it's Fran Walsh and Philippa Boynes talking about, Peter Jackson was like, right, I need a prologue. It's got to be under 10 minutes and it's got to tell the entire history of the ring to a point. It's got to have the War of the Last Alliance in there. We've got to set up Narsil. We've got to set up Isildur. We've got to set up Sauron. We need to set up Gollum and Bilbo and the ring and all of that stuff. And you've got to do it in under 10 minutes. And they did it. And yeah, you're right. It's not 100% accurate to the novel. It'd be nice if it was, but I'm not expecting it to be. I know they have to simplify things for a movie and cut things down, but it's adequate. It's more than adequate, actually. I think it's perfect. It's very eloquent. It uses its runtime exceptionally well. The same can't be said for Rings of Power. We're 5 episodes in right now, and nothing has happened. We're 5 hours in, nothing has happened. Sam says that Jeff Bezos was the reason this happened. Yeah, and I'd say he's the reason for its downfall as well. Sam Oak says House of the Dragon is winning 26 million average audience for a show Joffrey spoiled the ending to. Yeah, and I still haven't watched House of the Dragon yet. That was on me because I still feel hard done by, and I think I always will, by the ending to series of Game of Thrones. And I thought, why should I give a shit about a prequel series to something I know the ending to, and the ending sucks? They could set up things about the Targaryens and the White Walkers and everything like that, and we know how it goes down, and it's terrible. So that's why I've stayed away from House of the Dragon. But I have heard nothing but positive things about House of the Dragon, and I think that's breaking even, isn't it, with this series? It's running in tandem with it, so I think they're up to episode 5 as well. And I've heard the amount of ground that they've covered in 5 episodes on House of the Dragon, and the interesting characters and the political intrigue and the dynamics and the quality of writing on House of the Dragon is not even in the same ballpark as the Rings of Power. So I think I will check out House of the Dragon. Whether I'll get to it before the season finale of House of the Dragon, I don't know, because my time is limited and I am kind of pulled from pillar to post a lot of the time, and I've got to watch a lot of House of the Dragon. But if I do manage to catch up with it before the finale, I'll probably do a finale review and just a House of the Dragon season 1 review overall. And it won't be an episodic one like this one that I'm doing. Maybe for House of the Dragon season 2, if I am a fan of it. But yeah, I did kind of unfortunately miss out on it, but that was just me. I chose to avoid it because I was hard done by Game of Thrones, Nikki says real Galadriel wakes up at the end and it was all a dream. Yeah. What it needs to be, the only way they can pull this together is that we cut to Cate Blanchett pouring her magic water into the mirror of Galadriel, and it was things that were, things that are, and some things that have not yet come to pass. This is her horror story. Like when Frodo looks into the mirror of Galadriel in the movie and he sees the scouring of the Shire, that's his horror story. That is the worst physical thing that could happen to him. When Cate Blanchett Galadriel looks into the mirror of Galadriel, this is the worst thing that she can see about herself, is being played by a terrible actress with even worse dialogue in an awful Amazon TV series. Nikki says, so Isildur lives to be over 2,000 years old. What the fuck? Right? Yeah. I never even thought about that. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, they have fucked the timeline all the way up. Sam says, this ending won't suck though. Can't wait to see Rhea get eaten. So good in the book. So I actually don't know much of the history. So I actually should have opened with this. I open it with it every week, that Middle-earth is the legendarium that I'm the most knowledgeable about. And even then, I'm not a Tolkien scholar. There's loads of information I need to read the Silmarillion like another 1,000 times. I need to go through the 12 volumes of Middle-earth, which I do own multiple times. I need to go over Unfinished Tales again and the Lord of the Rings. I'm a long way off before I've got this shit memorized. But it is the one that I can hold my own on. Game of Thrones, I've read all 5 of the books. And that's probably as far as I'll get with Game of Thrones, because I don't see books 6 and 7 ever coming out. I mean, what was it? 11 years we've been waiting so far, and book 6, like, it's still no way out. So I've read the books of Game of Thrones, or A Song of Ice and Fire, I should say, but I don't actually know the deep lore. So I don't know anything about the history of the Targaryens, and even then, the stuff that is mentioned in the books, it's been 10 years. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Wow. That's mad. It's been 10 years since I last read the Game of Thrones books. I read them when I used to commute to university. It was an 1.5-hour bus ride each way. And in the first year I was there, I read all of the Game of Thrones books. Yeah, so it's been a long time. So I don't know it. So that Rhaegar means nothing to me, and getting eaten means nothing to me. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really fussed about spoilers to the point that stuff in like the greater lore, I guess, but the more intimate stuff that's happening in the show at the moment, if you can just keep spoilers to a minimum at the moment, just because I want to get to the series, and I'm convinced now. You have convinced me. Everyone here has convinced me to watch House of the Dragon, and not just you guys, but other reviews that I've been watching as well that say it's fantastic. So Nikki says Game of Thrones just isn't my bag. No disrespect, I'm just a Tolkien girl. I can totally understand that. By definition, Game of Thrones is a modern fantasy. It's a modern legendarium. And with that comes a lot of modern sensibilities and subversions that need to be thrown in there. And it's almost made like I guess it's trying to honor and acknowledge the stuff that's come before it, i.e. Tolkien and many other great fantasy works before it. But it's much more mean-spirited. It's much more... I don't even know if you'd use the word postmodern. But yeah, it's just more morally grey, and it's not as traditional storytelling and good versus evil and good conquering. It's much more cynical than that. It's a much more modern, cynical, deconstructive, meta kind of approach to fantasy storytelling, I would say, Game of Thrones, which can be appealing. I think at some points, though, it can be obnoxious. And, the constant killing of integral characters just for the sake of it, just because, you don't see that in many other storylines, do you? You didn't expect us to kill the main characters, 12 main characters in this series, did you? And that can be fine up to a point if it serves the plot. Ned Stark works for the plot. But some of them do get a little bit obnoxious, and it just seems like it's done for the sake of doing it. And actually, it made me laugh as well. I think I've mentioned this before, but George R. R. Martin did an interview, where someone asks him about Tolkien and whether he likes Lord of the Rings. And he says that, he was, like probably every fantasy author there, massively inspired by the works of Tolkien. But he said, I hated that Tolkien brought Gandalf back and resurrected Gandalf the White, Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. He hated that. And he thought that really just kind of ruined the story. And when they killed off Gandalf, he thought that was a really ballsy move, and he hated the fact that they brought him back. Yet George R. R. Martin brings back Catelyn Stark with Lady Stoneheart. Beric Dondarrion brings him back hundreds of times. Gregor Clegane in the character of Sir Strong. Jon Snow is resurrected. The Lord of Bones is resurrected. There's loads of characters. Mance Rayder, loads of characters are resurrected at least at some point in the book. So, hell, he probably does it more than Tolkien ever did. So it's just kind of funny, I think. No, Sam, yeah, I mean, you've probably caught up with this now. Yeah, I have read all of the Game of Thrones books. It's just been about 10 years, and I've only read them all once, so I can't remember the little bits of lore in there and everything like that. Just because I don't read up on it, I'm not as knowledgeable about it. And maybe that's down to the fact that George R. R. Martin hasn't finished his fucking main story. So maybe if he did bring out book 6 and 7 and it was complete, and then he went back and fleshed out the histories, then I would actually probably pay attention to it a lot more. But he published Fire and Blood in 2018. I think every spin-off show they will do from this. They're talking about doing a Jon Snow sequel series, which... no, I don't care about that. I know there's Duncan Egg, which could be cool, I guess, but yeah, I'm just not as jazzed about Game of Thrones as I am with Lord of the Rings, really. Nicky says Game of Thrones is too dark and rapey for me. Yeah, Game of Thrones is a modern take on how royal families were and are. Look at King Charles I getting beheaded by public like Ned. Yeah, there's, War of the Roses. It's very much influenced on that, isn't it? And houses. And I actually think it's a cool take. It's an interesting thing. It does get to a point, though, and I had this when I was reading Game of Thrones, that it does feel very historical. It does feel almost like, with all these houses and political intrigue and vying for the throne and everything, it's front and center. And then when dragons all of a sudden showed up in it, I was like, this is weird. And then, especially when you got to season 2, and by the way, I read book 2, A Clash of Kings, before I saw season 2. And it was weird both in the book and in the show. And I remember reading this extract in the book and having to go back and reread it about 10 times to make sure what happened actually happened. And it's the bit where Melisandre gives birth to a black smoke demon thing, and the smoke monster kills Renly. That was really shit. I thought that was really fucking terrible. And those high fantasy moments clash with me with the more realistic take on Game of Thrones. It's like, pick one or the other. If you want to do like a political intrigue thing in a fantasy realm, do that. But then when you start bringing in like dragons and mythical beasts and smoke monsters and weird shit like that, to me it clashes with it and it doesn't feel like it meshes well. Whereas Tolkien is specifically high fantasy through and through. So you can have giants, you can have ogres, you can have orcs and wizards and gods and all of that stuff, and it just feels much more at home and a much more cohesive as a legendarium, for me at least. But some people might disagree with me. Not to mention, Tolkien brought back Guy Ladbrow's brother. Yeah. Rings of Power is about regretting the past. Tolkien's work is about admiration. Yeah. And we've seen articles on that. The writing team and the crew have outright came out. There are articles out there saying that Tolkien wasn't progressive, that he was a racist. And I've seen these articles, and what was the quote? We're trying to write the book. We're trying to write the novel that Tolkien never did. Fuck you. I can't say a bigger fuck you to that statement than ever. Thinking you're above the man himself. This is what I mean. There's no power or passion behind this show. When you see Peter Jackson, maybe not so much on The Hobbit, but when you see him in behind the scenes of The Lord of the Rings, the guy oozes passion. I think at the time, the dude's parents died. Peter Jackson's parents both died during the filming of Lord of the Rings. And I spoke to Jed Brophy at a convention earlier in the... I think it was it earlier in the year I think I went to? Jed Brophy, by the way, credited in this show as playing one of the orcs. Really great guy. I stopped and had a conversation, like a 20-minute conversation with him. He was really sound. And he was very candid about the behind the scenes of The Hobbit and how it was kind of out of Peter Jackson's hands and the studio were very overbearing. But if you look at the behind the scenes of The Lord of the Rings, the guy had so much passion for it. And Jed told me that Peter Jackson's parents died during the filming of Lord of the Rings, and he never had time to grieve for them. He was right back to work, and he was working, like 20-hour days, 21-hour days sometimes. And it was just amazing. And you never get the impression that he regrets it. Anything that he did, the man oozes passion for Tolkien, and every single thing that he does, he was like, we went back to the book here. We wanted to tell Tolkien's message. We wanted to make these films for Tolkien. Now, in reality, Tolkien would absolutely probably fucking hate the Lord of the Rings films. And that comes across on screen. And it's not just the stuff that comes across on screen. It's the behind the scenes. It's the cast coming together as a family. And I love shit like the fact that Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd are still best mates and doing a podcast together on YouTube. That is so great to me. When you had the 20th anniversary reunion of the cast, I love seeing these cast members, even 2 decades on, just loving this shit. And you get none of that with Rings of Power. This was just done for pure greed. This was just done for money. Lord of the Rings is a successful property. Let's buy the rights to it. Let's try and fill that void of that gap in the fantasy TV show market. And let's just make it woke and, whatever terminology you want to use, woke, progressive, agenda, all of this stuff. Let's put our message in there. Tolkien wasn't progressive enough, and we need to change Tolkien. We need to bring Tolkien to a modern audience. And it's like, no, Tolkien has an audience. It has a modern audience, and it has a modern audience because Tolkien's works is phenomenally written, and it's traditional storytelling at its finest, and it's a story that just permeates every age, every race, every sexuality. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. It's a great story. It's fantastic escapism, and in my opinion, it's the best fantasy material out there. It really is. Tolkien stood on the shoulders of giants, and now everyone else stands on his shoulders. That's the way that I see it. But anyway. Oh, nice Star Trek quote there. Sheer fucking hubris. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sam says, my main problem with Silmarillion is that Tolkien didn't publish it. It's sentences that now form this show. It should never have been published unless it was him. See, I remember you mentioning this a couple of weeks ago, and I disagree with that, because I'm actually so grateful that those stories are out there and that we have all of that material, because the Silmarillion is... The Hobbit's my favorite book of all time. Right after that, if we're looking at Tolkien's works, it's the Silmarillion. I prefer the Silmarillion to the Lord of the Rings, which might be quite controversial. The Lord of the Rings is a magnum opus, don't get me wrong, and it probably is Tolkien's magnum opus, and I'm not going to disagree with that, but the Silmarillion just sparks my imagination and is hot, especially the First Age stuff, is high fantasy at its best. It's downright biblical, and it was designed to be that way. I see what you're saying, and I think we had this conversation, didn't we? And I think I compared it to sort of posthumous album releases from artists, but where I'd say that, okay, with when it comes to posthumously released albums, that I would say there's more of an argument there as to whether they should be released, because a lot of the time they're polished, they bring in session musicians, stuff is added to you might have only had like a vocal line, like a demo or something that was recorded. The recent Michael Jackson albums come to mind with this. You had Michael, which was released right after his death because they were just trying to cash in, and then you had the album Escape. Escape is a much better album, by the way, than Michael, and I actually really like Escape as an album. But the point is, there were probably just like a couple of handful of vocal lines that were recorded, which were polished up, and then they brought in other artists to contribute and to collaborate on it and to flesh it out. And that you could disagree with, because that's completely out of the original artist's hands, and the song was probably transformed in a totally different way from what was intended. But the Silmarillion is all of Tolkien's writing. There isn't anything that's added to it. It's literally just Christopher Tolkien found all of his father's notes. He compiled it into somewhat of a narrative order, a beginning, middle, and end that followed the natural timeline that was set out by Tolkien himself, and he just showcased that and put that into book form. So that's where I disagree, because it is all of the words of Tolkien. And then when you get stuff like the Unfinished Tales, that's all of Tolkien's writing as well. But then when Christopher Tolkien comes in, it's all to just kind of showcase and to put into context the writings that he's found. So Unfinished Tales, he'll be like, so this first account is dated from this date and this date, where my father had this idea for this character and this backstory, which is shown in part A. And then it'll be all of Tolkien's works. And then it'll be like, But then I also discovered these notes and these footnotes that were at this bottom of this paper that I found, and the amount of work that Christopher Tolkien must have done to compile all of this stuff. And then he'll say, oh, and these are like amended, and this is B and C or something like that. So that's where I disagree, because it is all of Tolkien's work. There's nothing that's added to it in any kind of way. Simon says Peter Jackson said he wanted to be hypnotized to forget it, though. Well, I'm not, I'm sure it took its toll on him, didn't it? Doing 3 massive films back to back to back. Yeah, but even then you could tell that during the process, he just had so much passion for it. Did you see the Hobbits wearing the woke charity tops to make money for Black Lives Matter? Yeah, I did. I didn't realize. I knew they were making money for something, but it was like these really hastily thrown together shirts. And again, it was just that if you hate the Rings of Power, if you have any negative criticism, legitimate criticism on the Rings of Power, you're a racist. Well, it looks like they've actually dropped that narrative now, because it seems like a lot more people are coming out and saying that they dislike the show. And they can't call everyone a racist. They try to, and it's not just Amazon that do that shit. Disney do that shit all the time as well, and it really pisses me the fuck off. The same thing happened to me. But yeah, and then that picture comes out, and it's like, well, how long is it since Amazon bought you? What was the promised price? Yeah, it's just terrible. It's just terrible marketing across the board. Sam says posthumous albums I'm not okay with, especially when they are decades old songs. The best posthumous album ever is Black Star, which was made for his death. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. And I think that I'm guessing that album was pretty much already in the can, wasn't it? I think before it was released. But yeah, an absolutely chilling album, and very poignant album as well, because you can tell that it was being written and being made when he knew that, his time was coming to an end. But yeah, completely agree with that. Right, let's get back to the Rings of Power, because I've got to be up very early. I'm off to London tomorrow to go and watch Return of the Jedi in concert. So I need to be up and at them. So let's power through this. We then have the scene of Miriel going to her father. As I've said, the gene pool is strong in this family. Going to Tar Palantir, and Tar Palantir basically just says, "Oh, don't go to Middle Earth. It's an omen of dread. Don't go to Middle Earth." And that's it. And I'm just thinking, we could have set up so much with Tar Palantir as a character. We could have really showcased that divide between the faithful and this new way of life, this new order on Numenor. There's just so much of this backstory and world building, crucial world building and character building, that's just completely left absent from this show, which I don't know what they're going to do when it comes to the actual downfall of Middle Earth, and they've got to introduce the Valar and the Ban, and why they're waging war on them in the first place, and why they're envious of the elf. None of that information's been given, and it's really frustrating. We then cut back to not Gandalf and Nori, and after he did his magic, he's kind of got his arms all bruised up and battered, and he's freezing his hand. He's kind of testing his powers, I guess, and seeing what he can do, and he's got his hand in this water, and he's freezing it. And this bit makes no sense at all. So Nori approaches not Gandalf and puts her hand in the ice, and then this ice is just kind of freezing her hand, and it's spreading up her arm, and then she eventually breaks away from it, and then she runs away from Gandalf going like, "You are evil," and they're still trying to do this shit like, "Oh, is he evil? Is he a good man? Is he evil? He can't control his powers." She willingly put her hand on his hand, and she could see it was freezing. Why would you put your hand on that? But she did anyway. Sam, you're off to work, mate. No problem. Thank you for tuning in. Always appreciate the viewership and the great conversations we have each week as well. Hopefully catch you next week, dude. Have a good time at work. And yeah, if you want to drop a comment after you've watched the stream at a later date, please do so, and I'll catch up with you. Thanks again for jumping on tonight. Okay, then we cut to, we're nearly there, guys. We're nearly there. We have the dwarves and the elves who finally sit down to a meal. We have some more Gil-galad, which initially I thought was nice until it's revealed that Gil-galad is a covetous, horrible, conniving character. And we continue to take these High King Gil-galad. who is one of the most unwavering, highly respected characters in all of the Legendarium. And we just kind of turn him into Thranduil in this, which I'm really not okay with. The way that he talks, the way that the actor carries himself, and his line delivery is very reminiscent to me of Lee Pace. Lee Pace's Thranduil from the Hobbit trilogy. The one actor that I actually really like in this is the guy who plays Durin. I've mentioned that before. I don't think the character's written particularly well. That's still a problem. But I like his performance. I like the actor. If Durin died in the show, I'd be like, oh, that's a bit of a shame, because I quite like him. So he sits at the table, and they're discussing this truce between all of them. Celebrimbor continues to be too old. And Durin goes into this really emotional speech about the stone table, the material, the stone itself, is used in sacred rites and is very hard to come by in Khazad-dûm and in dwarven culture. And it's used for monuments to the dead and for tombs and everything and for burial. And he hates the fact that this is just being used as a table. The utter disrespect. And Gil-galad's like, well, we'll send this stone back with you. You can as a gesture of goodwill, you can take this stone back with you to Khazad-dûm. And I guess it does kind of have a fun payoff later on, where he's just like, oh, yeah, I just wanted a table. I did actually think that when he was saying that, because he is a bit of a jokey character. I did initially think this was the way that it was going to be. And he says that, oh, yeah, I just made all that shit up. Disa needed a new table. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of fun. Maybe some people hate that, but I didn't have a problem with that. I thought that was quite fun, actually. Okay, then this is where this is where we get into some more disruption of the lore, which I'm not okay. So the elves believe that the Silmaril still exists. That's what I get the impression of. Gil-galad says, he shows Elrond this tree is dying, and it's withering, and it's like corrupted by this, horrible, this black goo. It looks like venom from Spider-Man. Essentially, has corrupted this tree. And he says that the light of the Silmarils could resurrect the tree. That's what he initially says. And when he mentioned that, I thought, does he not know the history of the Silmarils? Like, surely he would. He is High King Gil-galad. He would be learned in this kind of stuff. So there's 3 Silmarils. One is in the sky, one is in the earth, and one is in the sea. The first of which was given to Elendel. He is the star of Elendel. He flies in the night sky. He's basically the North Star, and that glow from the North Star is one of the Silmarils. You then have the other 2 Silmarils were captured by Mithras and Maglor, I think. And after they were sons of Feanor, who swore the oath of Feanor that the Silmarils belonged to their family. It was their birthright, essentially. But it kind of corrupted them, and it was the greed after going from the Silmarils. One was tossed into a fiery chasm along with its bearer, and then the other one was thrown into the sea. So why does he think maybe I missed something in that conversation, but I could have swore he said that, that only the light of the Silmarils will help this tree. And I thought, well, the Silmarils are gone, so you're kind of shit out of luck there, my dude. But anyway, as it goes on, he's saying that Mithril, the ore that was discovered in the last episode from the dwarves, only that can resurrect the trees, apparently. And we get this completely fictitious backstory of this random elf king or elf lord that was trying to save one of the Silmarils was in a tree. Is this it? I'm trying to remember this shit because it's not in the book. It's all completely made up. There was a Silmaril in a tree, and this elf guy was trying to put all of his light into it to keep the Silmaril preserved. And then he fought a Balrog, and the Balrog was trying to, crush the Silmaril, essentially. He was trying to pour all of his evil and all of his malice into the Silmaril to deaden its light. And the mix of the two went into the ground, went into the roots of the tree, and into the earth itself. And from that, Mithril was created. I didn't write this shit. But you've got a Balrog in there, right? Oh, wrong. was the wrong was probably directed at me. I probably misremembered it, but or are you talking about the backstory between the elf and the Balrog? I can't remember. The point is, we've seen our Balrog now, and the CGI on it looked really terrible. It looked like a kind of PlayStation 3 cutscene or something, like PlayStation 2 cutscene. It didn't look as polished. It looked nowhere near as good as the Balrog did in the Fellowship of the Ring movie, and indeed the Two Towers that was made 20 years ago. And it looks nowhere near as good in the one shot that we've got of it so far. And we know that it's coming back. You know, we know that Dorian's Bane's going to be hanging around Khazad-dûm, and that will probably present itself in, I would say, probably episode 7 or 8 of this show. Because the dwarves delve too gridly and too deep much sooner than they actually should have. Because I think someone mentioned last week that the Balrog isn't meant to come into it until like the year 3012 or something. No. Is 3012? I can't remember. In the Third Age, at least. So yeah, we've got an origin story for Mithril, and then Gil-galad says something like, Mithril is the only thing that can keep our people going and can restore this tree and can sort of like fight back against this corruption. I did think it was weird that a Balrog would want to crush the Silmaril and to destroy its light, because Morgoth wanted the Silmarils. He coveted the Silmarils. He stole the Silmarils and wore that shit in a crown on his head. And the crown was really heavy, and the Silmarils burnt him and everything like that. But he was so entranced by them that he wanted them. Now, the Balrogs worked under Morgoth's leadership. So why would they want to destroy one of the Silmarils? If anything, he'd probably want to recover it. I don't know. That's me deep diving into the lore too much. So what the fuck do I know, right? So Gil-galad's talking to Elrond, and he said, look, when you went to Khazad-dûm, did you see any Mithril? And Elrond's like, I can neither confirm nor deny whether I saw any Mithril. And he's like, look, dude, you belong to the elves. This is important. We're talking about the entire survival of our race here. Was there Mithril there? And he just goes, I swore an oath to Durin that I would not tell a single person that there was Mithril there. He basically comes out and says it, like, but Gil-galad, wise High King Gil-galad, can't read between the lines, and he still doesn't know if there's Mithril or not. Later on in the episode, you have like this heart-to-heart, I guess, with Durin and Elrond, where Elrond is a bit of a dick, really. He says, like, look, I never came to visit you at Khazad-dûm for friendship. I came for we basically came there because we need your help, at like a proposition. Which I'm surprised that Durin still wanted to talk to him after that, because that was the whole argument between them in the first 2 episodes, wasn't it? It was like, you haven't visited me in 20 years, and 20 years is a huge amount of time for a dwarf. And I'm like, well, it isn't really. Compared to an elf, I guess it is, but I don't know. It's all over the place. And then by the end of it, Elrond kind of turns on the waterworks and turns up the sympathy vote and says, Durin, if you don't help us and if you don't give us Mithril, the elves are all going to die and we're all going to just fade into obscurity and our light is going to extinguish. And he guilt trips Durin, basically. And then by the end of it, Durin's like, come with me, Elrond. So again, Durin's now traveled back with Elrond to Lindon. And now they're traveling back from Lindon to Khazad-dûm. And I bet in the next episode, no time's going to have gone past. Because bearing in mind, during this time, the orcs are marching on that watchtower in the Southlands. So if in the next episode they're at Khazad-dûm, which I fully expect that they will be, that's months of traveling. Not to mention the months that it would take Galadriel and the Númenóreans to sail from the utmost west in Númenor all the way to the Southlands. But no time is going to have passed at all. Guarantee it. I'm just going to get a quick sip of water. Oh, Isildur. Isildur. Look how they massacred my boy. Isildur's desperate to get on the ships. And he tries to curry favor with his friend. And then his other friend's actually a real dick to the other guy. He says, like, Isildur, you're my best friend. Not you. Who's like the other friend there. He's like, you're not my best friend. You're my best friend. It's like, that's dick. So Isildur just continues to be like completely incompetent, and he discovers that our Farazan's son is setting fire to the ships. So when we saw that trailer of the ships burning, I immediately thought it's the kinslaying and it's Feanor burning the ships. It's not that, although they're clearly playing on that imagery, I think, from the Silmarillion. And then Isildur covers for this guy. I was really confused about that. I was like, I don't know why Isildur would cover for this dude that's just set fire to these ships. Like, what's he got to lose? If anything, it would put our Farazan in the shit. And there's no real... How I thought it was going to go was, I thought our Farazan's son was going to, like, burn the ships. And then Isildur was going to be blamed for it. Like, they were going to discover Isildur at the scene of the crime. They were going to connect the dots and go, oh, so we wouldn't let you on the ship, so out of spite, you've decided to burn the ships for us. And then I thought Isildur was going to get reprimanded or something like that. And they don't really do that. Isildur outright covers for this guy, and I have no idea why. He has absolutely no need to cover for this guy, and could quite easily tell him exactly what happened. I don't know why Isildur was by the ship. I'm like, oh, he was stowing away, wasn't he? That's why he was. Yeah, he was stowing away on board. That's right. Let's see. Yeah, and then the final shot of the episode is just them preparing to sail to Middle Earth. Again, I thought they'd accomplished that at the end of last episode. Apparently not. And it was really weird because I thought we ended last episode with them about to sail to Middle Earth, and it was all, this episode they were going to be sailing there. The plot was actually going to be moving forward, but apparently not. It was just more talking. It was more dragging the heels. And then finally we set sail at the end of this one. And of course you get I wanted to talk about the costume design as well. The Númenórean armor looks absolutely trash. It looks really fucking bad. And the swords as well. I remember when they released do you remember when they released the character posters and it was like a hand, like, it was just like a close-up of the hand holding a sword or something like that, or a dagger. And one of the swords was like a horse. And everyone thought, oh, it's Rohan. We're going to see the early days of Rohan and probably like Eol the Young or something, or, But the swords in Númenor have a horse shape. I swear to God, I saw like a whole bunch of swords that have a horse at the bottom, and I thought, why? We've only seen a couple of horses in this show so far, and it's when Galadriel in episode 3 does her really weird shit-eating grin when she's riding a horse, but horses aren't particularly... Ships are. The sea is always right, remember, but I don't know, but the costumes, the helmets, the armor, it just looks all wrong. It just looks really genuinely terrible and just really cheaply made, and none of it looks practical. Again, compare it to the Númenórean armor from the Fellowship of the Ring prologue, which looks very ornate and has a history to it. And, later on with the Lord of the Rings films, we see that carried over in its culture and its architecture. There's a through line, there's a continuation, there's a progression from the Númenórean armor that eventually becomes the Gondorian armor. It's very similar, but it's still strikingly different. And you get none of that history. You get none of that design with the armor in this. And then you get your final hero shot of Galadriel, who embarks on the ship in slow motion with a horrendous lens flare CGI sunrise behind her, illuminating her in her plate armor and the fact that she's going to go and kick some ass and she's going to show these boys how it's done. Also, this has been mentioned before, on the actual plate armor, there's the Star of Feanor, which, if you've read the Silmarillion, would never be a thing. Galadriel would not have any insignia, any attachment to Feanor whatsoever. But they've put the Feanorian star on her armor for some reason, which again just shows a complete lack of understanding of the lore. I think Feanor was Galadriel's cousin, if I remember rightly. And I mean, with the kinslaying and the burning of the ships at Aqualonde, like, Feanor was a complete motherfucker to Galadriel and killed, part of her family, and he put like a bad name on the whole family, essentially, because he killed other elves. It was the kinslaying. Not to mention the fact that he was demanding that she give up 3 strands of her hair so that he could encase them in crystal for the Silmarils to restore the light. And she outright refused because it was covetous. It was, just done out of greed and craftsmanship, which is why it's such a big deal when Galadriel actually does give 3 strands of hair to Gimli to show that relation of the dwarves and the elves coming together, because it was like a genuine, really from the heart gesture that Gimli wanted that, because he was entranced by her beauty. That's the end of the episode. We made it, guys. I'm powering down, so I'm going to round this thing off. I don't want to take it any longer than it needs to be. Another shit episode, but it's fun to talk about. It's fun to make fun of. And chatting to you guys is an absolute blast. I absolutely love it. So we're going to keep doing it. So join me next week for more Rings of Power. So it's going to be Friday, as always. It's going to be the 30th of September, 11 p.m. British Standard Time. Episode 6. We're getting close to the end now. Final 3 episodes. We can do it, guys. We can do it. But I'm kind of morbidly curious now at this point to see what episode 6 is going to have in store for us. In the meantime, let me know what you think of the Rings of Power. If you haven't done so already in the chat, make your voice known. Maybe you love the show. Maybe you outright hate it. Maybe you're somewhere in between. I'm open to all opinions on it. And maybe there's something from the episode that I didn't mention. Actually, there's probably quite a few things from the episode that I didn't mention. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts on Rings of Power are as we go from week to week. In the meantime, last time I checked, I'm on 98 subscribers. I am so close to 100. So I'd be very, very grateful if you would consider hitting the subscribe button for more reviews, more live streams like this, talking about things. There's a lot more TV show reviews now as well, and I've got so much content planned. We've obviously got more Rings of Power. There's Andor, so if you're into Star Wars as well, I'll be talking about that week to week. There's going to be movie reviews as well. There's all kinds of stuff. So if you're into movies and TV, please do consider subscribing. And give me a follow on Twitter while you're at it. Why not? You can follow me at Hobbit Fan Editor. I post all the times that I go live with stuff and give you hints as to what you can expect on the channel. So it's all good. I will actually be back tomorrow. It's been a triple whammy this week. So I did Cassian Andor yesterday. I've done Rings of Power today. And tomorrow is going to be my rescheduled James Bond review. Unfortunately, my computer died on Tuesday, so I couldn't do my Skyfall review. So I'm moving it to tomorrow. So that's going to be tomorrow at 11 p.m. British Standard Time. Skyfall's one of the big ones. There's a hell of a lot to talk about it, and I did see it on the big screen on Tuesday. So I'll be talking about that, and then that'll catch us up very nicely for moving into next week. Once again, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight and taking time out of their night to join me for this rant on the Rings of Power. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you for commenting along. You guys mean the world to me. And stay strong. We're almost through season 1. Till next time, have a very good night, and I will catch you tomorrow if you guys tune in. Thanks for watching.